like cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up notification, or the bell notification if you want to be one of the first people to get in on some of this straight game when I drop it. This question right here comes from a brother from Little Rock, Arkansas. And the question is why did Tupac's mom choose to have him cremated rather than have a regular funeral like Tupac said in some of his songs? And the answer to that question is very complicated, if you will. But the facts that we come to understand later, it explains a lot, and it goes in the direction of, somewhat her being who she wanted to be with her son, which was, rightfully so. Tupac didn't have a will or trust or anything like that, and so it was actually up to her, because he wasn't married at the time. It was actually up to her as to, what she wanted to do. But when you delve a little bit deeper into the situation, and I talked about this before, but since you asked this question, I'm going to go into it, in a little bit more detail. We come to understand later that after Tupac died, right, looking for children, looking for whoever, during the probate process, and when you pass away, you go through that process of probate and so on and so forth, and all that makes its way through the court system. And so anybody who has the ability to file a petition on for a part of your estate, be it a child, be it a wife, be it anything like that. We've seen that situation happen with Prince, from that perspective, where people were coming out of the woodworks after he passed away, because he also was cremated, right? And so once again, dealing with the Tupac situation, we all know that what we came to find out later is that Tupac's real father, Billy Garland, was still alive, right? And Mr. Garland actually filed, for half of Tupac's estate, which legally he had the right to do. And so I think being, part of the reason, being that Afeni knew that Billy Garland.
Last time I saw my son Tupac was in a hospital bed in North Vegas, Nevada. I'd just gotten off the plane, and after I greeted everybody in the emergency room, and when I walked through the doors, I saw something that resembled my son. It didn't look like my son last time I saw him. The respiratory and gadgets hooked up to his ear, his nose, his eyes, his testicles, his toes. Metal zippers up and down his body from when surgery had been taken as part of his body out. So you would have half-hour visits, so you would just sit there, and the doctor said that he could possibly hear you, and that you could talk to him, but he just cannot answer. So that's what I did. I would sit in the hospital room and talk to my son, and put chapstick on his lips, because the respirator made it very chappy.
Most people didn't even know that Mr. Garland had showed up to the hospital, at that particular time, until Tupac actually went on MTV and talked about it, walking down the boardwalk, doing that interview with the young lady, the reporter from MTV. And he had spoken about that, right? So most people really didn't know about that. And if he had spoke about it, earlier than that, chime in. But from what I understand is, I understood what that was before that. So, I knew that before that. But what I'm saying is, publicly, from what I understand in him speaking about what that was, like I said, because we had a conversation about not, fathers not, you not carrying your last name or your real father, and so on and so forth. I talked about that too. So being what Afeni knew at that particular time, right? She knew that Tupac's real father was still alive, right? And so I don't know if this was her actual thinking, but you can look at it as part of what actually happened, because there was a kind of, you know, a little resistance there, a little fight there in court in regards to, you know, what she felt like Mr. Garland deserved, and so on and so forth. And so you could possibly look at it and say, well, the reason why she had him, some people have said that the reason why she had him cremated is because she didn't want to do any kind of blood test or have any kind of, you know, remains or whatever to do any kind of blood test, because that was the thing that initially that proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that Billy Garland was Tupac's real father. And so now, once that's proven, and once that was proved because of the DNA, because like I said, you know, when he went into, when he was shot in Las Vegas, as probably as well as New York, you know, they always usually take a blood sample and they got your blood on file at the hospital. You know what I mean? And so by that being what that was, I don't know if Afeni, if that was her true motivation. I don't know if she thought that through from that perspective, or she probably just said, you know what, I wanted my son to rest. I didn't want the hassle, people running to his grave, trying to dig him up, and all of these other things. Because like I said, you got a lot of Tupac super fans as well as stans, and then in some cases sycophants. You know what I mean? From that perspective, you know, she could have been coming from there. But the heavy notion was, and then what we come to find out later is that, you know, Tupac's pops was still alive, and so coming in, you know, doing that, and then, you know, actually making this man, when she knew, you know what I mean, take a blood test. Like what? You know, and then now it comes out to be that, you know, he's the father. You know, she initially ended up settling with Tupac's father, you know, for an undisclosed amount of money. You know what I mean? I think like $600,000 or something like that. So when you deal with that, that would be the reason that I would most lean towards in regards to that. But like I said, the true reason, only Miss Shakur would know that. But like I said, you know, when you look at the evidence and the paperwork involving, you know, the knockdown, drag down, you know, situation that that she kind of was instigating as far as with Tupac's real father, you could see some of the motivation. And like I said, once I guess they found out that, and I think she probably knew what the end result was going to be anyway. Once they found out, you know, through the DNA test that, you know, 2Pac Shakur was actually his son. And like I said, and she knew, you know, from that perspective, like I said, once again, and 2Pac had found out from that perspective when Mr. Garland went to the hospital and paid him a visit when he was shot. He had been shot in New York from that perspective. So yeah, man, brother from Little Rock, Arkansas, that's the notion, or should I say the idea of the road travel, and the reason why she had Tupac cremated instead of having an actual funeral. Because can you imagine the spectacle of, you know, Tupac, the public finding out, you know, really, you know, oh, Tupac's father was there at the funeral. I mean, what do you mean? You know, now it becomes this other thing, like, whoa, Tupac's father was there, and so on and so forth. And we, like I said, we understand the interview from when he was talking on Venice Beach. But like I said, most people at that particular time didn't know what Tupac's father looked like, you know, from that perspective. Even Tupac, you know, up until he came to the hospital, didn't know what his father looked like. And so, yeah, you know, so to the brother from Little Rock, Arkansas, that's the prevailing notion by most people who really understand what it is. But like I said, with all due respect, as to Afeni Shakur's true motivation and why she would have Tupac cremated instead of buried, you know, was her prerogative as his legal guardian at that particular time. And, you know, there was also this other notion out there, you know, in regards to Suge Knight had something to do with having Tupac cremated or something like that, and the ashes and all of these other theories and things like that, which is totally not true. After you know, Tupac had, you know, was found to be deceased and all of that, you know, basically Tupac's mom was in charge of that whole situation and everything that happened after that. And so, like I said, if you see the video I also got on my page, I actually take you on a trip to Malibu, to the beach where Tupac's ashes were scattered. And it was also alleged that the outlaws had smoked some of his ashes in a blunt. You know what I mean? And so there's another thing. Like I said, I believe the brother from Little Rock, Arkansas, you probably heard one of the songs where, you know, Tupac said, "Bury me a G," and, you know, closed casket, and so on and so forth. It's a lot of stuff that he had spoke in his music. And that's why I say, you know, a lot of times you can't take everything that Tupac said in his music literally. You know what I mean? You can kind of take it figuratively until you like delve into the thing. But in the song Black Jesus, Tupac had spoke about, you know, smoking his ashes. You know what I mean? Smoking his ashes and so on and so forth. So yeah, so it's a lot out there that, like, you know, you can kind of weave around. But like I said, when you really do the motivation aspect and the things that motivate people, like money, you know what I mean, fame, things of that nature, power, and so on and so forth. You know, I usually lean towards those being motivating factors as the reason why people do things. People don't just do stuff just to do it. There's always a reason behind it. And you just got to really find out the motive or the reason as to why they do things. So like I said to the brother from Little Rock, Arkansas, from my perspective, right, from my understanding and the information that I've gathered, and, you know, that's what I kind of lean towards as to why she had Tupac cremated. And like I said, but the ultimate was up to her. You know what I mean? Because she was the one that was left in charge of his estate and so on and so forth. Your boy DELRAY, straight gang.